if you focus for 90 days and you digest every piece of information you can set enough of a foundation so you can build whatever plan you're going to want to do. That's what I recommend to anybody that's starting out in something, is like, write the plan, try to do the plan, and then adapt if you have to.
Welcome, everyone, to the Road Less Traveled show. This is a show about people that were successful in a previous career and left that career to go down a different path. I'm your co-host, Richard Coyne.
And I'm your co-host, Bill Zahller.
On today's show, we're so pleased to have Scott Lewis with us. Scott, welcome.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Absolutely, Scott. Well, yeah, thank you again for being on the Road Less Traveled show. Can you tell us, to begin with, a little bit about your background and how long you were in your initial line of work, and then what you've transitioned to?
Yeah, it's interesting. The name of the show kind of sums me up. So I graduated from Michigan State with degrees in chemistry and marketing. Went to work for a biotech firm for about 4 years or so. I'm kind of a big integrity guy, and some stuff happened at the top levels of that organization that I did not agree with. So I decided to leave. And I'm like, well, what do I do? We're kind of looking around, looking at the job market, looking at MBAs. I was 27 at the time. So I was looking at those options, and I chose option C, which was join the Army. Mm-hmm. So I joined active duty. I'm an officer, so I went in as an infantry officer, did that for 4 years on active duty, and then came off of active duty. I'm still in the Guard and the Reserves, the whole put your PJs on one weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, and go hide in the woods. But then I went to work for the federal government. I was pretty successful there, made it to GS-15 before I quit. Worked for some pretty good people with some of the new business secretaries that were brought in under the two different administrations when I was there, but really kind of focused on strategic planning, risk management, project management. Those were kind of my functions inside there. And then I kind of got tired of that and started up Spartan while I was working in the government. And then we grew pretty fast and no longer in the government. So that's kind of my journey to where I am today.
Excellent. You need to tell us a little bit more about what Spartan specializes in and what your focus is?
Yeah, so we focus in self-storage.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we do. We do have some other stuff, and I've got some funny stories about a couple of RV parks in the Permian Basin that we bought early on for some cash flowing assets. But 98% of the portfolio is self-storage.
Okay. And Scott, do you if I remember right, you buy existing ones and you also develop them also, is that correct?
Yeah, we're kind of a buffet line for self-storage. We've got Class A stuff, both that we bought and we built from ground up. We've got some Class C stuff that we're repositioning to Class B. We've got some Class B that it's very hard to go to A, but repositioning to B plus. We've got some that were taken from C to A because we're rebuilding them and putting in really nice properties in there. So our strategy is pretty multifaceted. We try to stay in the secondary and tertiary markets. We're pretty location agnostic, other than California, Illinois, New York, and kind of the upper Northeast, just because of the different skill sets required to operate in those business environments that we don't have.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. So Scott, if you would, touch base on some of those funny stories you alluded to. Maybe it's the early days of your investing, or maybe it's your Army days or federal government days. If you can share something that would, love to have our listeners be able to hear some of your background on the funny side.
Yeah. So it's kind of one of those where it's looking back, it's kind of funny. And it's kind of one of those where you're like, ha, oh, right. Like that's one of those stories. So no kidding, there was Friday the 13th, March of 2020, right? Like, not a fantastic time in the world. Mm-hmm. Like, this thing coming out of Wuhan is scary. First time in history, people are paying you to take oil. That's bad. Right. And I got a call at 7:00 on Friday night. One of our parks in the Permian Basin has been hit by a tornado. Ooh. Okay. All right. So we've got pandemic. All right. That's kind of unfortunate. A park that is a man camp for oil workers when oil is negative. Also unfortunate. Now, Mother Nature decides to rain on our parade, literally and figuratively. So it's one of those things that, like, oh, well, what do you do? Well, you take a knee, you kind of put together a plan, and then you act. So I drove down there. I flew down there actually, and I ended up driving back because it was really when things were starting to pop off the pandemic. So I actually drove myself back, but got it down there, got it stabilized. It was hit pretty bad. Some of the infrastructure was still okay, but then got it all up and running within 30 days. And I say it's funny, just looking back, it's just one of those things that's pretty comical, right? It's just like any one of those three things really sucks. So to have all three of them just dumped on, like all you can do is laugh. That really comes from the military side of it, right? Like, you know, it's funny. It's humor is how we got through some of the more trying times.
Sure.
Kind of some of the stuff that we were going through here or there in the military, right? And it'll probably sound a little bit morbid to your listeners, but we had some of our soldiers that lost limbs and stuff like that, and I remember hearing them being like, "Dude, you should get a prosthetic that automatically kicks the soccer ball and enter the World Cup." Like just joking with each other, right? Because if you don't, you go crazy. And if you can ingest humor into really tough situations, like you just go bananas. And that's kind of what it was, just really funny. It's just like the trifecta of nonsense that hit that RV park. We just kind of look back on it and just kind of laugh and just like, well, we got through that, so we can get through other stuff.
That's right.
That's amazing. Yeah. So, you know, and unfortunately, there are some of those, you know, days in our history that are going to be the kind of things that are indelible in your memory and you never forget. You know, older generation would call it, you know, Pearl Harbor Day. You know, yep. we would call it 9/11. And unfortunately now, you know, COVID is right up there. You know, I kind of mark it as March 15th, the day we know the world stopped. And, you know, that was the Sunday, after the Friday you mentioned. You know, we saw it getting bad. And Bill and I at the time actually were about to close a deal. We were literally, the buyer was picking up the pen and getting ready to sign. And then on, you know, a couple of days after March 15th, their bridge loan went up 200 bips overnight, and they had to stop.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Oddly, that affected pricing.
Go figure.
Who knew?
Yeah, exactly. Who knew?
Exactly. Anyway, we actually pivoted and we went to the backup buyer and we renegotiated the next contract in 1 week, which was fantastic. And then they put it on hold. So we're like, oh my gosh. So anyway, fast forward just to finish that story, since I got your attention now. You know, we took it back out in March and we're able to, you know, price adjusted, slightly down. But anyway, it still turned out to be a really good thing for the investors. And we actually closed the deal, you know, nice. And made the investors money. So it was actually good, considering the overall situation everybody was in. So it was kind of, you know, bad situation, but obviously when, you know, once people settled down and realized in May, you know, a couple months in that the world really wasn't going to end, you know, we were able to kind of move forward. So yeah.
And the timing asset on that too, you know, that was an early one that was more of a C-class property. So again, it was probably good to unload at that time as you came up more and more issues of payment for, you know, people when everything shut down, you know, people that, you know, have to actually physically go somewhere and do work to get paid. They can't work remotely for the most part, right? Versus the white collar employee can do a lot from home. So yeah, the timing worked out, was fortunate on a lot of angles on that. So yeah. What was a kind of deciding factor to get you to leave the military when you started Spartan, and how did you was it all at once, or had you been kind of thinking about it for a long time, building up a kind of a side hustle, or how did that happen?
Yeah, so when my whole strategy for the military was go in for 4 years on active duty. I never intended to make it a career. I wanted to go in and serve, get the experience, and then that was that. I've stayed in the Guard and the Reserves, kind of on the part-time side, just because it's a lot more flexible and it's fitting, and I've enjoyed it. So that's why I'm still in even today. But there was a decent gap in between the military and when I started Spartan, and it was one of those things when, you know, found a good partner on it with Ryan Gibson. I don't know if you guys have had him on the podcast, not, but good guest for him. But so as far as that, found the right partner, and then honestly just was tired for working places that sucked. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm really not. I didn't have a lemonade stand. I didn't do any of that stuff when I was a kid. It was more of a kind of an ideology that, like, I'm tired of places that suck. So I want to create one that doesn't. Ryan was more the entrepreneur of the two of us. He sold Cutco knives, had a lemonade stand, like enlisted all of his buddies to work for him. Like he's got the entrepreneurial spirit. Me, I just hate people, and I only wanted to work with ones that I liked. So now I kind of get that choice. So that was really my why, and I wanted to build a place where people could grow personally and professionally. So one of the things I took away from the military was kind of a whole life concept to kind of I'll say an employer for the lack of a better term. We don't hire people that are looking for jobs. We hire people that are looking to build a life, because we push really hard at Spartan. And to do that effectively without having your team burning out and quitting on you all the time, you have to know them personally and professionally, and you have to set the conditions that they can achieve personal goals inside of a professional organization. Otherwise, you'll just lose them. They'll burn out and they'll leave. McKinsey's a great example of that. Great company, good training, average tenure, probably 3 years at best. Because you come in, they beat you to death. You'll learn a lot of great stuff. You do a lot of great work, and you're like, shoop, pull the ripcord, and you're out.
Yep.
Just a different culture. I didn't want to do that. So that's kind of where my why lies as far as like for Spartan.
Nice. So Scott, as you look back and we're starting Spartan. Okay, at that point you were working for the federal government. You were, you started as a side project or whatever, a side hustle. At what were there some obstacles you encountered in early days along the way of getting Spartan going?
I'll say not really. And I say that because we were very, very methodical about what we did. There was nothing that happened by chance. We developed a plan and we executed the plan. And it was one of those things that we had set the conditions that, we had good balance sheets, we had good jobs, we had good income, we didn't have debt. So when the banks looked at Ryan and I for our initial kind of lending, they were okay with it. I mean, we never had to do the hard money stuff. We started in residential flipping, and we never had to go to hard money lenders or anything. We just went to banks. And it's because we had a really good, we looked good. Our resumes were solid. Our balance sheet was okay. Our income statement was okay. So that the bank was comfortable with us. And, we started out writing a strategic plan first before we went out and did stuff. And then we just executed that plan. A lot of entrepreneurs get sidetracked or hit difficulties because they get distracted. The entrepreneur is a squirrel on meth, right? That's basically what it is, what he or she is. I'm not that person. I am very focused and very I write a plan and I just do what I'm supposed to do. And that was kind of the whole thing. And Ryan was there right there too. We just were working on our plan day in and day out. And of course it took a little bit longer than we had hoped. And, like any real estate deal, some of our initial ones took a little bit longer, got tied up in some jurisdictions, but nothing out of the ordinary for a standard Tuesday in real estate.
Excellent. That's great to hear. Yeah. And again, you're right. You got to build your knowledge, and then you obviously lay some plans, and then you've got to take action. But at the same point in time, if you don't have a plan, you're not going to get anywhere. Again, it's like Alice in Wonderland, whatever,
Just going to say the Lewis Carroll.
If you don't know where you're going, well, then guess what? You're going to end up there.
That's right.
Or whatever the exact quote is. Yep. But yeah.
Yeah, we see that all the time at the the local RIA meetings also, that somebody comes in, they're all excited about, fix and flip. And then next month it's buying notes. And then next month, they're just kind of, everything the person presenting it makes it sound exciting. And they get to buy the course or, do the weekend seminar and whatnot, but they never focus on anything, go deep. They just kind of go wide. And then you don't really gain a mastery of anything. Like you're saying, that you have a plan, you stick to it. You didn't, as you were initially starting out, I assume you didn't look into, car washes or, industrial or anything else. You were focused on your plan and then develop the next plan to go to the next phase as you went into self-storage and expanded from there. I guess kind of leading into that question, Scott, what was like the first victory you can think of for your organization as Spartan? And when you guys came together, was it a fix and flip, or was it when you scaled up and went into the self-storage? Or
I mean, the first victory was our first deal. It was a house. It was literally a crack house in between Ryan and I. So we lived in a kind of a developing neighborhood in DC. and it was literally a crack house. So we used to call it the transaction shed in the backyard, which you can probably put two and two together there. So that house, we worked on it for a little while. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know we were doing a direct mail campaign, but that's what we were doing. Finally got the owner. All we could scrape together was $100,000. That's it. That's all we could do. And we're like, hey, that's all we got. And she took it. I'm like, okay, cool. We did the deal. We ended up making about 175% returns. Our initial investors was a buddy of mine and my father-in-law. So, and then like we put money into that. So that really capitalized us to go do the next deal. And because we had good jobs, we didn't have to take the money. A lot of people pull the ripcord too early, and hungry bellies make bad decisions. So if you don't have a year of reserves, do not start something. I just don't recommend it. There's too many people that chase stupid ideas because they start to run out of money. That was never us. We never were in that position where we were hungry and had to go do a bad deal. So that was really the first success, and that was the snowball that we kicked down the hill, and just kind of kept going from there.
Oh yeah. Ironically, unfortunately, probably that first house, once you improved it, the cash flow went way down from what it was doing, wasn't it?
We sold
a crack house before.
we sold it. We never believed in cash flow out of the gate. There's a lot of folks that my guidance runs very counter to what you read on Bigger Pockets and any of that stuff. I'll take a whole wheelbarrow of money today for cash flow. We never gave a damn about cash flow up front because cash flow doesn't fuel growth. It's not fast enough. So that the $200 a month that you get from some sort of rental property will not grow your company. It's not going to do it.
Right.
And you can't scale fast enough with the percentage of cash flow to actually grow a company. You need a big wagon full of money that shows up. So like our guidance to younger folks is definitely, or whatever, newer folks in the business it runs very, very counter to most of the advice that's out there.
Right. Now, I was just thinking that particular property being a crack house might be doing $100,000 a month in cash flow is the real existing business, right?
I don't think the transactions were in cash.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
hence the transaction shed.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So there was one day where Ryan went out there and pushed it down, so it wasn't very sturdy. And then folks came to transact, and we're looking at the shed with very, very a lot of disappointment. So,
so they probably weren't running that on QuickBooks, I imagine.
I don't think so. I don't think it was like the shed at a parking garage where you got money. I'm not sure that's how that works. I never went in it, so I could be completely wrong here.
Yeah,
didn't look franchisable.
No, I don't think so.
Oh man, yikes! So Scott, as you look forward at and your recent years in Spartan, or is there a funny story you can share, something that you've experienced with Spartan up and running like you have it now?
Man, funny. I don't like funny is a matter of perspective.
That's true.
So in my sense of humor may be different than others. It's probably I'm an infantry guy. Like I chose to go to war, so I obviously have a war sense of humor. So trying to think. We had a property manager. I mean, it's not a funny story, but it's kind of like a Baxter eating the wheel of cheese story in Anchorman. If you guys are familiar with that, the dog eats the whole wheel of cheese, and he's like, Baxter, I'm not even mad. I'm impressed. And you pooped in the fridge? Wow, that's amazing. But so we had kind of one of those stories at one of our properties in Florida. We had a manager there, and man, he presented like really, really tip-top shape. He was on drugs. We didn't know. Go figure. But he devised this scheme to where he would trade drugs for units at the facility so that the local drug dealers could come in with their everyday cars and grab their burner cars with no plates on it and go drive around and do their drugs and then come back and swap out their cars out of the storage facility. So we found this out, and we obviously fired them, cleaned it up, got rid of them, right? It's kind of a normal Wednesday in storage. You find all kinds of that kind of stuff, right? And we were just like, wow, like, hell, I'm not even really mad. That was a really good idea for him. I obviously got fired and we turned him over to the cops and that kind of stuff. But so it turned out to be a bad day for him. But for us, it was just like, wow, that's pretty enterprising to think of that scheme. I wouldn't have thought of that. So Baxter, you ate the wheel of cheese. I'm not even mad.
Well, after his cousin's transaction shack got torn down, he had to do something.
He tried to franchise it. It didn't work.
That's right.
That's right.
Well, excellent. Well, Scott, where are you today in your journey with Spartan? You're growing. What's your kind of 5-year plan, or however your forward vision?
Yeah, so we do 3-year plans. Mm-hmm. So our current strategic plan is from 2020 to 2022. So we are in a strategic planning cycle right now. We're currently in kind of the environmental scanning phase of our overall strategic planning process. So we'll launch our new plan probably early December of 2022 for 2023 to 2025. Mm-hmm. And the vision for the end state of 2025 is to have $5 billion of assets under management with $1 billion of revenue across the entire portfolio, including real estate and operating companies. So that's kind of the overall vision, but it's kind of where we're trying to go.
Excellent. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome. Wish you the best of luck and driving hard against that. I mean, again, big goals, make it happen. So excellent. Yep. Very good. Very good. So Scott, as you look at, maybe it's through your company, maybe it's through personally, is there something that you do to give back that you can share with our audience?
I try to help veteran entrepreneurs as much as I can. That's kind of really where I focus my time. If I'm giving back, I don't give money. I'm just not a big believer in just sending a check. That's not who I do. I like to give time and actually interact with the human being. So I do, anytime vets need help, I do a lot of coaching for especially veterans that are in MBA programs and stuff like that on the real estate side of the house. I generally have 2 or 3 calls a month with those folks that are getting out to kind of start their entrepreneurial journey. In addition to the Inc. 500 list that we've been on 3 times, we're also on the VET 100 list, which is the 100 fastest growing veteran-owned companies. And generally, I try to help when I go to the conferences or I'm speaking at those conferences. As a member of that list, I generally try to help the entrepreneurs that are there that aren't quite on that list kind of to get to there. So mine's mainly veterans focus. Spartan has kind of a vets, pets, and kids. That's kind of kind of where we focus our time there. So
okay, excellent.
Yeah, excellent. Great. Well, Scott, is there something as you're scaling and developing your plans for the next 3 years, or something you recently implemented that's helped you achieve some of those goals?
We've we had kind of an integrated kind of operating system of bits and pieces of a lot of different other systems, like Scaling Up by Vern Harnish, Traction by Gino Wickman. And one of the things that we've recently implemented is a couple of new concepts from the 4 disciplines of execution. And that's really about the weekly commitments, really kind of putting it out there and then tracking who is actually accomplishing their weekly commitments and who isn't, to really kind of set the scoreboard of who's succeeding in that and who isn't, to really, really drive the accountability. So I recommend all listeners that 4DX is a pretty good book. And it's more of the tactical nature versus Traction or Scaling Up or some of the other kind of operating systems out there.
Yeah, 4 Disciplines of Execution is a fantastic book. It's written by Stephen Covey's son, and people may know that name. Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and there's a few other authors that are part of it. And forgive me, the other names are escaping me right now. But again, excellent book, excellent parameters and framework for setting goals, making sure you're measuring and achieving, and then you drive to the next goal, etc. So yeah, excellent book. And there are worksheets out there that people can go and find on the internet to help you kind of launch and activate this kind of thing. So again, 4DX, 4 Disciplines of Execution. So great book. So Scott, what advice would you like? It sounds like you do it. You have some of these conversations, multiple times a month with some of your veterans contacts that are trying to kind of move to the next things themselves. How would you frame the advice that you share with them?
I say the same thing to everybody. Before you start anything, take 90 days, take a knee, learn as much as you can. There's an ideology out there that floats some of the blogs and podcasts and this kind of thing that says, ready, fire, aim, right? Is an ideology of don't take forever. Well, those are generally written by people that have never actually used a rifle to achieve an objective, and ready, fire, aim is a great way to run out of ammo and then die. So I don't recommend that. That's a bad idea. But sitting there aiming, and never pulling the trigger, also good way to die. If you're using your rifle, if we're using that analogy to achieve an objective. So what I generally say is take 90 days. If you focus for 90 days and you digest every piece of information you can for 90 days, and you're really diligent about it, I bet you can set enough of a foundation to you can build whatever plan you're going to want to do. So take 90 days, build your plan, and know that your plan will not survive first contact.
Right.
But like Eisenhower said, in preparing for war, I generally find that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable.
Right.
That's what I recommend to anybody that's starting out in something, is like, write the plan, try to do the plan, and then adapt if you have to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to be able to pivot and adapt to the situation. But again, you if you hadn't done some of that planning work to consider multiple scenarios as far as where things might happen, then you're going to be caught unprepared.
Yeah.
So plan ahead first, and then think of the contingencies or the situations, and then adapt and move forward. So excellent.
There's so many variations on that same theme. I think it was Mike Tyson that said everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. That and he gets out the window, and you got to adapt. Yeah,
yep,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, Scott, what's the best way for our listeners to be able to reach out and learn more about what you have going on there with Ryan at Spartan?
I think just head to our website, spartan-investors.com.
Okay, and we'll link that down in the show notes. Well, Scott, we really appreciate you being on the Road Less Traveled show today, and wish you continued success in all your ventures.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the opportunity to be on.
Absolutely, Scott. Thank you for being on. We'd also like to thank our listeners. Please continue to give us a 5-star rating so we can bring you more great content like Scott Lewis on our show today. We'd also like to thank Park Capital Partners. Park Capital Partners sponsors the show as well. We want to remind everybody about 2 initiatives that Park Capital Partners has going. And that is first, the Park Capital Partners Value Add Fund, which is a 506c fund open today to accredited investors. And then next, we also want to let folks know that last year, Bill and I created the Park Capital Partners Foundation. That is a 501(c) nonprofit foundation. And the way that works very quickly is that, first of all, Bill and I, through Park Capital Partners, fund the operations of the foundation so that all the money donated goes to do its best work, and that is helping others. Number 2, we personally donate. Number 3, we donate corporately. And then finally, when investors invest with us, we make a donation to honor that investor from a pre-selected list of 15 different charities, including Wounded Warrior. So we certainly want to encourage everybody to reach out, say hello. Bill and I are happy to have a conversation anytime. And we want to thank you for listening. And remember, folks, the road less traveled may be calling you. We recommend that you listen and take action. Thanks for joining.